I think it's my new favorite book of all time. Bold statement, but I think it's accurate. The glare today on my glasses is so extreme. It is distracting me so much. Anybody else that wears glasses and makes YouTube videos, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The struggle is real for us. Hello, I'm Bo, and welcome back to Bo's Books. Today, I want to talk to you about my August wrap up. So I've been watching other booktubers do their wrap videos, and I liked the structure of the ones where they would section it by star ratings. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that today. I'm gonna give you my wrap up, not in the order that I read the books, but in ascending order from lowest star rating to highest star ratings. I think that's a fun little build up. I actually started using the Peach rating system. I'm just gonna hit pause really quick to let you know that this is where I start going on a wild tangent about my rating system. And if you're not interested in this, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the next chapter. I'll link the creator down below where I got that from because honestly I can't even remember. I thought that would help me give my ratings better. Peach stands for plot, enjoyment, artistry, characters, and heart. I have trouble with ratings and how to rate books, and I didn't want to rate solely on enjoyment. I did want to, insert some kind of critical thinking while I'm reading, but it is difficult because I don't really know what I'm doing and I'm trying to figure it out. So I know that I'm not alone in that. I know a lot of people struggle with, what should I rate this book? I liked it, but I don't know, do I give every book 5 stars just because I like it? Or what does that mid-range really mean? And I started off by using Caw Pile by G from Book Roast, and I thought that was really awesome for a while, but more recently I've moved over to Peach. So as I'm giving my little mini reviews, I'll leave my Peach rating on the side so you can see like what I rated each category and what led me to the star rating that I gave to each book. So with Peach, you rate each one 1 out of 5. So for plot, like what would you give the book 1 out of 5 stars or 1 out of 5 points or whatever you want to say. And then at the end, you do some math, which I have it set up in a spreadsheet to do it for me. But at the end, it gives you this like general overview of, between 1 and 5, and that's your ratings. So you'll be able to see what I gave each category of the book and then how that calculated into the star rating that I ended up giving it. It also helps me to kind of understand what I liked and didn't like about a book. Sometimes I feel like I completely enjoyed a book, but the writing was actually terrible or the story was awful, but for some reason I still loved it. And to me, that's like, well, I don't want to give a 5-star rating, even though I immensely enjoyed it, if the story overall was actually not great, you know what I mean? So it kind of helps me. It helps me to feel better about what I'm rating a book. And who knows, I might change the system, and I probably will at some point because I went from rating totally by enjoyment to using Caw Pile, and now I'm using Peach. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going to work best for me. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insider scoop on how I am actually rating these books, since I've never really talked about it before. And this whole reading journey that I'm on, I want to disclose what the journey entails. And part of it is figuring out how to rate these books. And that's the thing too, is that reading is so subjective, even for the same person reading the same book, but at different points in their lives. I could read a book and DNF it because it's just not for me at that moment, and then go back to it years later and give it 5 stars because it struck a chord with me because of whatever I'm going through at that time in my life, So reading is so subjective, and I definitely feel like depending on when you read a book, it could totally change the way that you feel about it or the way that you took it in or enjoyed it. So all the ratings that I'm giving these books are what I'm feeling about these books at this moment in time. And that could change. If I go back and read these books 5 years down the line, my rating could be totally different, which I suppose is the joy of rereading books. And I'm not really a rereader. I don't tend to reread books, even if I love them, because in my mind, I feel like I could be using that time reading new books because there's so many books that I want to read. And I know that in my lifetime, I will never read all the books that I want to read. So I don't usually go back and reread. However, lately I've been having the desire to pick up some books that I loved when I was younger because I want to see if they still hold up for me now. So I think I'm going to do that at some point, reread some of my favorites that I keep calling my favorites of all time. And I haven't read them in years, so I'm curious to see if they're going to still hold up, especially since in this video I'm claiming a new favorite of all time. Anyways, I've been going on tangents. Let me get back to this wrap up. I just get so excited to talk to you guys about my book journey, you know? So at the beginning of the year, I had this theory that the last book that I read before my wrap-ups was always my favorite book of the month, and I was thinking that was because I was just on a high from reading the last book and being so excited about it, so it ended up being like my favorite book of that month. And I wanted to kind of test this hypothesis that I had. Is that accurate? Is my favorite book of the month always going to be the one that I finished last? But that has been debunked. Because this month, my favorite book of the month was the first book that I read, and it did not change throughout the entire month. I felt like no other book could surpass it, and honestly, I think it's my new favorite book of all time. Bold statement, but I think it's accurate. I just don't know what other book is going to surpass it this year or ever, but we'll get to which book that is later. If you want to guess right now in the comments, based on the books that you see in my thumbnail and the books that you know that I was reading this month, I'm just curious if you're able to guess it. Put a guess down in the comments right now, and then we can see by the end of the video if you guessed correctly. Just a little something fun to do. Okay, have you made your guess? All right, I'm gonna continue. The first book I want to talk to you about is the one that I finished the most recently, which is actually my lowest rated for the month. So there you go, my theory has been debunked. I actually finished this book on the very last day of August, so I just slipped it in there to get it into this reading wrap up. And that book is Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. Now this is the Japanese translated short story horror book. This has 11 interconnected dark tales, and this was my Q3 book for the In the Void book club that I'm part of, which is a horror book club where they choose a different book each quarter. The discussion for this book is actually happening on September 4th, so I got it in just in time, and it was perfect to read in August because August was Women in Translation Month, so I was really excited to actually read a translated work by a woman. Now, don't get me wrong, just because this is the lowest book on the rating list this month doesn't mean I didn't like it. I'm actually giving this book a 3.5, and the 3 range in my rating is usually still enjoyable for me. They're just books that I probably wouldn't go out of my way to recommend, or they're books that I might not even remember in the next week or month or anything like that. I don't think this is a book that's going to stay with me. I think because they are short stories, that kind of enters and exits my brain so fast. Like, I literally read this book in one day because it's so short. It's only about 162 pages. Now that I've said that, I feel like I'm going to be on the hunt for short stories that really impact me. And if you have any recommendations for really heavy hitting short stories that have stuck with you that you think that I should read, please leave that in the comments down below. What I liked about this book was that they were interconnected. So when you read one of the short stories, it's really interesting to figure out like where it connects to the previous ones. And I love that. I feel like all the characters kind of intertwine in this. I think the part that threw me off was the stories were very strange, which I like, don't get me wrong, but I felt like I couldn't really understand the timelines and, you know, what happened before what, and there was like stories within stories. It was kind of giving me like an Inception vibe at some moments where I was like, okay, well, did that story actually happen, or was it not real? Was it all made up? I don't know. There was a lot of confusion when it came to that, and I also feel like because it's a translated work, I'm assuming there was a lot that was probably lost in translation. I feel like English as a language isn't a very extensive vocabulary as compared to some other languages. I just can't help but think that I'm like missing deeper meanings because it's a translated work. But it was enjoyable. Like, it was a really quick read. There were fun short stories. There was quite a few stories that dealt with grief, which I'm actually really liking grief horror right now because it's been 1 year since my dad passed away. So a lot of the times when I'm reading about grief, it's actually been like a lot of catharsis for me. And I feel like it's coming up a lot in the books that I've been reading. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I've bought a red car now, so then you start seeing red cars everywhere, whereas before you didn't notice them. And I'm wondering if it's something like that, where now that I have had this like huge, immense loss in my life, now I'm noticing discussion of grief or topics of grief more prominently than maybe I would have noticed before. before. It's just standing out a lot more to me when I come across it in books or media or anything that I'm consuming. But I have been feeling very validated in my grief as I've been reading how it's been portrayed in different stories. I think this book was fun, but I'd really like to see some of her other works. Like, one that stands out for me that I really want to try is The Memory Police. I've heard people talking about that. So at some point I'll probably pick that up from her. I also feel like maybe after we do the book club discussion, I might change my mind. Sometimes hearing different perspectives from other people kind of gives me more of an insight to a book, and then maybe I will like it more or understand it more. But for now, my initial response is going to be that 3.5 range here. I am curious to see what other people think of it and what other people in the book club are rating this one. So the next book I want to talk to you about is The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. Now, this is a YA horror book. The general synopsis of this book is that we follow a character named Mars, and they do go by he, him, she, her, they, their. They're open about their pronouns, but he is gender fluid and he is queer. To say what I'm going to say, I don't think is spoilers because it happens at the very beginning and it's kind of the basis of the story. He has a twin sister who has been attending this sleepaway academy that he no longer attends because of issues that he had with bullies, essentially around his sexuality, and that gets revealed more as the story goes on. But in the beginning, what happens is his twin sister comes home and essentially tries to kill him, and in that attack she ends up tragically dying. So Mars is dealing with this grief around the loss of his twin throughout the story, and what brings him back to the academy is he is trying to find answers of what happened to his sister. This was not like her. So Mars has this idea that this group of girls that his sister got involved with, called the Honeys, has something to do with what happened to her, and he wants to go back to the Sleepaway Academy to find answers. And you essentially follow his unraveling of this mystery, which was fun to kind of discover, okay, what's actually going on at this camp. And I still don't really know how I feel about this book. I thought that I was going to love it, and it just kind of stayed middle of the road for me because I don't think I fully understood it. This is one of those books that I know is good. The writing was phenomenal. Like, I really love how Ryan described his characters, went into these like metaphors, and I think that's what it was. There's just so many metaphors in this book that I feel like it went right over my head. It almost made me feel like I wasn't smart enough for this book because I feel like there's such deeper meaning that I can't understand. And so because of that, I went with a 3.75 for this book because I liked the concept. I liked everything about it. There was some parts that he just lost me. Like, I was sitting there questioning what I just read, having to go back and reread, and still not understanding what he was talking about. That might just be a me problem, but I don't know. There was just moments when it came to the cult aspect that's in this book that really confused me. When, the Honeys are this group of girls, and that's where it kind of gets culty. And when it came to like that, I was just very confused. I was confused with the supernatural elements of the story. I feel like if this was just a purely coming of age book, I would have loved it because it has to do with like a sleepaway camp, and I love a good sleepaway camp story. And I really enjoyed reading about a gender fluid character. I have never read a story with a protagonist who is gender fluid, and it was really awesome to see their journey and their experience in this book. I loved that. I really, really loved that, and how they were getting treated by other campers, and just their thoughts and feelings, and also the main characters dealing with the loss of their twin sister. And so you get a lot of grief representation here, and how this character is dealing with their grief. And again, that's what I was saying, is I felt like I was really resonating with the parts in the story that talked about grief. And it's crazy to me that the cult aspect is what threw me off, because I love a story with a cult in it. I just didn't get this one. It got really supernatural, kind of weird, and I was just confused by, do they have powers? Do they not have powers? Like, what is happening? It really threw me off on like how to rate this book because I didn't have a lot of emotions while I was reading it, but I still enjoyed it. Like, I was kind of bored, but I was still intrigued. This one confused me so much, but I liked it more than I didn't like it for sure. So, which is why I gave it a 3.75 because I think it was really good for the parts that I really did enjoy. Like, I think it's great representation for a gender fluid character, and like the queer representation in this book is awesome. So I had to rate it high because I loved that aspect. There was just the elements that I didn't get. The next book I want to talk to you about is Everything She Does Is Magic by Bridget Morrissey. So I also gave this book a 3.75. Now this one I got as an e-arc off of NetGalley, and it actually gets published September 9th. And I will say right off the bat, I do recommend it. It's a very, very cute book. It is a YA sapphic romance with a touch of fantasy, as we're dealing with witches in a town that is devoted to Halloween. When I think of Hocus Pocus, and they have this lore of the Sanderson sisters, right? And so that's how I felt about Everything She Does Is Magic, that this town of Fableview is known for having witches that live in it and, you know, keep the magic of Halloween alive every year. However, these are just stories. So Darcy, you know, one of our main characters, she loves Halloween and she every year is super involved with it. She organizes all these events with her family and they're kind of like the mayors of Halloween Town. However, she doesn't really believe that magic is real or that witches exist. She thinks that they're just stories. Now, our other main character, Anya, is a witch. So Anya is about to get initiated into her family's coven on her 18th birthday. However, there is a stipulation that she needs a mortal protector in order to successfully be initiated. The problem is that Anya is one of those edgy loner kids. She's also the new girl in town, so she really doesn't have any friends. And she's very awkward and different, who listens to dark, moody, sad music and wears all black. She's essentially me as a 17-year-old. But the other thing about Anya is she has a huge crush on Darcy. And Darcy, like I was saying, is Miss Sunshine, Miss Popularity. Her and her family are essentially the center of the town. They run everything. They're friends with everybody. Everybody knows them. It's a total juxtaposition between their two personalities. Like Darcy is blonde, Anya has black hair. It's just you're getting that light and dark aspects of day and night, or Elphaba and Galinda, you know what I mean? It's that two sides of the coin, and how are they going to come together? Darcy's main thing is she loves the town that she lives in, she loves her parents, but she really wants to break away and go off to college, but she doesn't know how to separate her life here and go off and gain her freedom without feeling like she is abandoning everything that she knows or abandoning her parents. Now you have to remember that this is YA, so a lot of the struggles or the thoughts in this book from our main characters are very ingrained in coming of age. It's very ingrained in I'm a teenager graduating from high school, what's next? And so I think it's perfect for somebody that is in that age range to read this book. I think it would resonate a lot with people of that age. I feel like I'm a kid at heart and I can still go back to that mindset of like when I was a kid or when I was a teenager and still enjoy stories like that. But if you're not somebody that likes YA, definitely don't pick up this book because it is very YA. And the characters do have that annoying teenager quality when they talk or when they think about things. And I had to actually check myself when I was starting to read it, because when I first started it, Anya responds to being in Darcy's presence in a very immature way that bothered me, because she's like, oh my god, I can't like be around her and I'm so like nervous and awkward and I can't talk to her, I'm gonna just run out of the room. And I was like, that is so stupid, just go talk to her, like this is annoying. But then I remembered that when you're 17 years old, a lot of the times that confidence is not there. You can't just walk up to this person that you have a big crush on and have a normal conversation. In high school, you're still in that point where you're discovering yourself and discovering your identity, and there's this like social hierarchy that, oh my god, I can't talk to this person because they're so popular and I'm just, you know, I'm not there. So you kind of stay in your social groups and things like that. And so I know that it's different when you're that age. And so I had to put my adult brain aside and go back to, what it felt like to be a kid and not be confident that I could just talk to anybody and it's fine, that nobody's going to judge me, or if they do judge me, who cares? I feel like that is devastating to somebody that's in high school, to be embarrassed, or, what if I say the wrong thing? And it's such a big deal. And I feel like the author really captured that, even though, reading it as an adult, we might see it as like, oh my God, this is so annoying and immature. But, if you look at it with that lens of being 17 years old or being in high school, I think she captured it perfectly. Feelings that you have when you're a teenager are just astronomical. You know what I mean? Like when you are in love, you are in love. Like this is the love of your life and you're going to be together forever and this is your soulmate. That's just how it is when you're young and you're experiencing all these things for the first time. They feel huge because you've never really felt those things before, and it's also before you've been jaded by the world, and everything is still hopeful and you're excited about things. Yeah, this book really took me back to feeling young again and less jaded about everything. I want to read you one or two quotes that kind of stood out for me that really like brought me back to feeling like a teenager. To them, everything about me is a supposed phase, and that's always been annoying because I know myself. I know what I like and what I want, and it doesn't make me any better or worse than them just because I haven't been alive as long as they have. That is such a teenager thing to say. Like, if that is not something we've all thought when we were kids, then I don't know what is. And then there's this one from Anya. So this one just made me laugh because I feel like I wrote poetry like this when I was younger. Okay, so she says, I want my tears to make an ocean where I can live in a boat of my own despair. Just spot on, Bridget. Spot on. So this one I kind of went back and forth on. I felt like originally I was going to rate it 4 stars, and then I dropped it down to 3.75 after I kind of went through Peach and really kind of did some critical thinking of like what I would rate each section. And so then I ended up at 3.75 because I did very much enjoy it. But do I think it's a book that's going to stick with me for ever? Not really. I do think this is a book that most people would enjoy. I think the only stipulation would be, do you want to read a YA or are you not in the mood for that? This is also the perfect book to read during Halloween time. Now that it's starting to creep into fall and everybody's kind of gearing up towards Halloween, this is going to be a perfect book to pick up. It's a quick, easy read, and it's going to get you in the mood for fall. It's going to get you in the mood for Halloween because this town celebrates Halloween every single day of the month. So every single day in October, they're doing different events. They're dressing up in costumes. And so I think a lot of people are going to love this book. I feel like I still have that like morning rasp in my voice. I keep drinking water and I feel like it's not helping. Get it together. We are now down to the last 2 books that I read in August. One of these 2 books is now on my all-time favorites list. And I'm gonna give you a hint that's not really a hint, but these were both 5-star reads for me. I feel like these are 2 sides of my personality. However, there can only be one. That's not true. I have many books that are on my all-time favorite list, but for this video, there can only be one. And we'll talk about it in a minute. For now, I want to talk to you about The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Now, I am a huge horror movie fan, and I have loved The Exorcist, the film, for a really long time. I remember the first time I watched that movie was by myself, alone in the house, at night, while everybody else was at a family party. I stayed home with a blanket over my head, watching The Exorcist for the first time. And I must have been maybe in junior high. But anyways, I was actually really excited to find out that the author of the original book was the person who did the screenplay adaptation for the film. So when I found that out, I was like, oh, the book's gonna be great. Because, sometimes when you read a book and it's really good and then the adaptation is terrible, well, I figured that if the author is the one who did the screenplay adaptation, that's why the movie was so good, because obviously they're going to make the movie to fit the book, right? And he actually won an Academy Award in 1973 for Best Screenplay Adaptation. Now, after having read the book and watched the movie, I can say that the movie is a perfect adaptation of this book. Now, being a lover of the story, I do feel that the book is better. It was like getting an extended director's cut of the film. The other thing that is really awesome is that the author narrates the audiobook. Now, I usually listen to audiobooks at the same time as I'm reading, so I do immersive reading as much as possible. That's just my go-to way of consuming literature because it helps me to stay focused. So I was probably already going to listen to it anyways, but when I found out that William Peter Blatty was the narrator of the audiobook, I was elated because I love when an author narrates their own book. They are able to read it with the correct intention. So I will say, he knocked it out of the park. His voice is so haunting and emotional. It was like listening to the film almost. Reading this book just gave me chills. Like, I don't feel like it's easy to be scared from a book because when you're reading a text, there's just something different about reading horror versus watching horror. I think when I'm watching a movie, it's easier for me to get scared because of different elements, right? It's not usually the plot or what's happening. It's usually the music or a jump scare that kind of gets me scared. So the horror that you're getting from a book or the scared feeling that you're getting from a book is going to be very different. And I think that I'm realizing that I'm not going to ever really feel scared. I felt like I was on this journey of wanting to read a horror book that scared me. And I feel like I'm realizing now that my definition of a scary book has to be different from a scary movie. I'm not going to get scared in the same way. It's just not going to happen from reading text. But I will say that this book scared me. And like I said, it's not the way that the movie scares me. It just started making me think of things and I was starting to scare myself, essentially. So I will credit that to the book. Because I was reading this book, it made me start thinking scary things in my head, and then it gives you that feeling of like, oh my God, now I have to go to the bathroom and I'm scared to go because it's dark. So I have to turn on every light in the house. And that is what this book made me feel when I was reading it at night. And for that, I will credit it. This is a scary book, especially for something written in 1971. You know, what was written before that was scarier than this? This is terrifying. You know, I was talking about this with somebody in the In the Void book club Discord channel, and we were talking about how this book essentially started the whole satanic panic era in the 80s. This came out in 1971, and then the film came out in 1973. There's so much talk about satanic rituals or black masses, human sacrifice, desecration of the church, and I feel like that led a lot of people to be terrified. I mean, I feel like we have to give credit where credit is due and admit that this is one of the best horror books ever written. I feel like this was a catalyst to so many other possession stories. Like, this is the foundation of all these other stories that came afterwards. I mean, when you think of demon possession, the first thing that you're going to think of is The Exorcist. I'm so glad that I finally read this book. I mean, I had seen the movie, so I feel like, you know, I had the story in my mind already, but it's awesome to say that I've read it now and I see where the movie stemmed from. All those iconic movie moments are in this book. A lot of the times I don't like movie adaptations or vice versa. Like, once I like fallen in love with a movie, I end up reading the book and I don't like it. Like The Shining by Stephen King. I love the movie and because I saw it first and I didn't read the book until years later, and then when I finally read the book, I didn't like it because I was like, this is so not the movie. And a lot of people have their opinion the other way around, where they love the book and they hate the movie because it's nothing like the book. Now, I know I'm going on a tangent here about The Shining, but I have to say it really quick to kind of give my point. But The Shining movie versus the book, they are two different stories and they're both awesome. In both of them, obviously you're following Jack, but in the book, he has such a different character arc where he's just this father trying to do good for his family, and he starts off this really good guy and he's just down and out, and he starts to evolve over the course of the story and you're just following his journey. Whereas in the film, Jack is already this like jerk from the beginning. Like, you already know, like, oh, clearly this guy is gonna be the villain of the story. It's two totally different characters. Let me just get back to the point here. Basically what I'm saying is it's not often you find a really good film adaptation for a really good book. I also found out that William Peter Blatty wrote and directed Exorcist 3, which I have not seen yet. I'll just go back and watch 1, 2, and 3. Let's do that. For any of you who have been living under a rock or just are not into horror, this book is about a young 11-year-old girl who gets demon possessed. So she starts playing with this Ouija board, and all of a sudden her personality starts to change. She starts to experience supernatural phenomena in her house. Her mom doesn't know what's happening to her. She just knows that Reagan is changing. Her personality is changing. She's acting out. Things are happening around the house. She doesn't know if Reagan is lying, making things up, or if these things are actually occurring. Like the bed starts to shake and it's really cold in her room, and all these things start to happen and all these signs, and it's terrifying. So essentially she's trying to figure out what's wrong with her daughter. And you're following this single mom who is trying to do the best for her daughter, getting her all the tests that she possibly can to see medically what is going on. So eventually the advice she gets is that she should see a priest. What I love about the characters in this book is they are so well written. You're following this single mom who is an atheist, so she doesn't even necessarily believe in God or the devil or demons. So her main motivation is she will do anything for her daughter. And then we're also following this young priest who is struggling with his faith. And I feel like that is such an awesome thing to look at, because when you think of like a priest, you often think of holier than thou. They essentially should be better than everybody else because they're so much closer to God. But the way that Father Karras is portrayed is so down to earth. He's struggling with how he can perform his duties as a priest when he is struggling with his faith. At the heart of everything is this little girl who is dying because there's something going on with her and they just cannot figure it out. This book really gave me chills. It is such a good read, an easy 5-star read. There's so much depth. All of the minor characters in this story also stand out, where we even have this police detective who is investigating a murder that happens, and it's very suspenseful because you're thinking, oh my gosh, like what is he gonna find out, and is anybody gonna get arrested, and what's going on, who's gonna get in trouble for this murder. And what I also found out is this is book number 1 in the Exorcist series. So this is actually a duology. So book number 1 is The Exorcist, and then book number 2 is called Legion. And apparently Legion follows that detective that I was just talking about. I feel like this is one of those essential reads for any horror lover, or even anybody that wants to get into the horror genre. I feel like, you know, if you're going to read horror, like you should start with an OG and really get in there with a good, easy 5-star read. And I'm not going to say this is like the easiest book to read. I do feel like it gets right into it with the weird things happening pretty early on. I mean, I might be biased, but I was not bored. I was thoroughly enthralled the entire time. But again, I might just be biased because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So of course the book was going to be, you know, a hit for me. So take that as you will, but I do think this is a beloved horror book for a reason.
That awkward moment when I have to take a pause once again to let you know that I thought I was recording, and it turns out that I wasn't. So the beginning footage of me telling you that Anne of Green Gables is my new favorite book of all time is non-existent. So sorry for the anticlimactic reveal, but yeah, surprise. Now this is a story written by L.M. Montgomery in 1908, and the setting takes place in the late 1890s, so this does make it a historical fiction. It is a middle grade classic book. The story revolves around Anne Shirley, which I've said before is my favorite character in all of fiction. This is a character-driven novel that follows her life from the age of 11 to 16 and a half. Anne is an 11-year-old orphan who gets adopted by Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert and goes to live on Green Gables. Now, originally Matthew and Marilla had intended to adopt a little boy to help Matthew around the farm, but there was a mix-up and they received Anne instead. Anne Shirley has the wildest imagination and she can talk a mile a minute. I'm telling you, this little girl never stops talking, but it's almost impossible not to fall in love with her. Her positivity and hope and love of nature and her desire to find other kindred spirits in the world is just so magnetic. And I hope that the rest of my review that I actually did record does this story justice.
Like the plant that I have in the background of all of my videos, his name is Hector. And so I think it's really funny that she does that, and that's such a big part of her character, is that she gives names to things. It gives it more of these human-like qualities. You know, it's easier to talk to them or connect with them. And so, you know, that stood out so much that I had to put a tab in it. This book does follow her from when she's 11 years old, and by the end of the book, she's 16 and a half. Most of the book is from the beginning of her stay at Green Gables, and those are my favorite times in the story. She is so fun to read about when she's a kid because her imagination is so wild, and she's just so much fun and so captivating that you just feel like her sense of positivity and hope and love for everything is so contagious, and you just smile and laugh as I was reading it. She just makes me feel so happy. Reading this book is such a huge comfort to me. I was so enamored by this world. You know, they always have that question of, you know, if you could jump into a book and live in that world for a bit, which one would it be? And it would definitely be Anne of Green Gables. I would love to be friends with Anne, and I would love to go on adventures with her and use my imagination to just be out in nature and play make-believe. There's no real plot to the book. It's really just a watching Anne grow up and change and develop and going through different things in her life and different experiences. It's a true coming of age where you're following her growth and how she connects with all these different people and how she changes people's lives. I think she just changes people's perspectives of life in general. And it's not to say that she's liked by every single person in the book. I often remember a quote by Dita Von Teese, and she says, even if you're the most ripe peach on the tree, there's going to be somebody out there that doesn't like peaches. And that was me paraphrasing. But essentially, you know, you could be the most amazing person in the world and a good person and a beautiful, loving person, and there's still going to be somebody that doesn't like you. There's either going to be somebody that's jealous or intimidated or threatened by you, just doesn't like you for no reason. They just don't like you. You know, she's not perfect. She has many flaws, and that's what makes her even more lovable, is seeing all her flaws and how she still overcomes. I feel like it's so sad because by the end of the book, she's so much more mature, and you kind of like see this gradual growing of a child. It's kind of like a parent watching their child grow up, and you're just so in love with them as a little kid, and then they grow up and all of a sudden they're teenagers and they're going off to college, and you're like, oh my god, that's my baby, you know? The author just does a wonderful way of transitioning her from being a child into being a young woman. And there's just such a range of emotions that you can get from this book. You know, I laughed with her and I cried with her. Like, there was moments where I was like sobbing because of things that she goes through, and just thinking about it breaks my heart because it just felt really real. You know, some of the things that she's feeling, this character feels like she came alive to me, and I'm just sorry, I'm getting choked up because she experiences a loss in this book that really resonated with me because, like I said earlier, like, it's been 1 year since I lost my dad, and reading this just had me sobbing because of the way that she expresses grief in this book is so real. And there's a moment where she says, like, I feel like I'm betraying this person for going on living in the world without them. Like, I feel like it's betrayal to them because you just love them so much, and it's almost impossible to think that you can still live in a world where this person doesn't exist anymore. And that is just exactly the way that I feel, you know? And so this book just touched my heart. There's no way that I can say that this book is not my all-time favorite. And I was so excited when I started reading it. I actually didn't even start with this copy. I rented it. I checked it out from the library to begin with because I did not own a copy of it. So this is actually the copy that I checked out from the library. And because this is such an old book, there are so many different editions of the book that you can get. So even when I went to the library, it wasn't just this copy. There were so many different ones that I can choose from. But I chose this one because it is an illustrated version. It does have really cute pink sprayed edges. But let me show you a couple of the pictures. I just love illustrations in books. Like, I'm a lover of children's books because they have illustrations, and I honestly wish that books for adults had illustrations because I love pictures. I'm such a visual person. This is such an iconic scene in the book. That to me is one of the most iconic moments between Anne and Gilbert. And Gilbert is her academic rival. She gets so offended because he makes fun of her hair and calls her carrots. Because another big prominent aspect of the book is she's so concerned about her red hair. But anyways, I started reading the library book that I had checked out and I was so in love with it that I wanted to annotate it. And you can't write in a library book and obviously you're not going to keep it, so I had to purchase my own copy. So what I ended up doing is buying a box set of her entire life story. So this is the whole Anne of Green Gables series and it follows her entire life. L.M. Montgomery ended up writing 8 books in the Anne series and she also has other short stories that include Anne, but as far as the, official Anne series, there are 8 different books. So I went out and got this because I just had to have it and this is definitely a series that I intend on completing at some point. Another thing that I had mentioned wanting was a beautiful special edition of Anne of Green Gables, and that was something that I was intending to purchase because I love the book so much and I just wanted to commemorate it and have like this beautiful copy on my shelf. My best friend actually went out of her way to find that for me and she said that she was gonna give it to me for my birthday, but my birthday is not till December and she just couldn't wait that long and she just wanted to already present it to me because she was excited. Anyways, she ended up getting me this beautiful edition of Anne of Green Gables. It has this beautiful slipcover on the top of it because it is a hardback. And she said the reason why she picked this one specifically is because not only does it have these beautiful gilded edges here and this beautiful ribbon bookmark that I always love in books, but the cover is a hand illustrated cover and it's just gorgeous. And I am just so happy to have this book in my possession. I think this is just such a beautiful edition of this book. It even has a quote on the back here, lightly embossed into it, and it says, "Kindred spirits are not so scarce as I used to think." So yeah, I hope I've done this story justice by trying to explain why I love this book so much and why this is the easiest 5 stars I've ever given to a book and why I'm so excited to continue the series. I really recommend you picking this book up. Now, of course, it is a historical fiction, so it might not be everyone's cup of tea as far as the writing goes. It is flowery, it is like old-timey. It may not be the easiest read if you're not somebody who enjoys historical fiction. It's also a classic because it has stood the test of time. I'm not going to say it's for every single person out there, but do I think everybody should read this? Yes, I do. I think it's a beautiful book. This is probably going to be a book that I never stop talking about. Talking about this book warms my heart and makes me so happy. I can't stop smiling when I talk about this book. So yeah, it's absolutely a favorite, and I definitely think that Anne Shirley is my kindred spirit. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around with me. And if you'd like to share your thoughts with me, I love to hear them. I love to start that conversation in the comment section. Go ahead and tell me about your thoughts on any of the books that I read. Do you want to read any of the books that I read? What are you feeling? Tell me. I want to know everything. And with that, I'll see you next time. Bye.